Honey, we need to chat.
Hey guys, welcome back to Honey, We Need to Chat.
Welcome. We are a podcast all about communication in relationship. We believe that when communication dies, bad things happen. And so we have a focus and a passion about communicating within our relationship.
It's all about the communicata. And you know what? That's actually picked up. That's getting said back to me
Has
now.
it really?
Yeah, the
Oh, that's so
communicata.
funny.
Like I have a friend be like, hey, how's the communicata?
Communicata. It's
If
not
you
even-
know, you know.
It's not even a real word.
Isn't
I
it?
looked it up in Spanish. I'm fairly sure that I looked it up and it wasn't. Actually, do it right now.
Oh, it is now.
Do it right now.
Oh.
Where'd your phone go? Because I speak Spanish a little bit. I need to be
The
right.
Communicata Spania. What is the Spanish Inquisition? Now, what is the Spanish word for communication?
Comunicación.
Comunicación.
But communicata is cooler. So.
Yeah, I know. What is it for communicate?
Why don't you just type in what does communicata mean in Spanish?
Comunicar. Oh, maybe close.
Comunicar.
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 That's what it was. It must have been that.
Maybe it's in the
Must have been
past
that. No, I know. It must have been that.
Must have been, yeah.
Must have
yeah.
been.
So we're both right, but communicata.
It's all about the communicate.
Well, this is an exciting episode because this is our 20th episode.
2-0.
And that is an achievement, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. I never really had a picture of what 3 months of this podcast would be like,
Yeah.
but this is way more than what I thought it was going to be like, even though I didn't really have a thought of what it would be like.
Your
I've been-
expectations were lower.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I did not think we would be where we are.
Yeah.
We've got some awesome stuff coming up and some things we want to be doing and growing and changing. We got a long way to go, but it's been so good. I've had so much fun.
And that is largely because of you guys.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Every week when I post our episode and I watch the listens come in, it's just, I'm like, why are people listening to this? But I'm so honored and excited that you guys are. So
but it's
thank
like
you.
instant too.
Instant,
like you will upload it and press upload and then check back not long later and it's like
30 listens already.
straight
Yeah.
away.
It's hectic. It's awesome. And we really appreciate it. So thank you for being here. And on that note, actually, if you are here, you're obviously listening to us on some kind of platform, which means you probably follow us on some kind of platform. But we wanted to just say we would love you guys to take a moment right now and literally swipe to Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, or Facebook and just follow us there if you are active on that platform, because we do have content that comes out on all of those platforms. And the content isn't always the same across the platforms. And another thing we're really trying to focus on in this kind of next season or stage of the podcast is building our community element outside of just the episodes that we're releasing. So if you don't follow us or on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or TikTok, hop on over and do that right now. And also, if you're listening to us on a streaming platform and you haven't yet followed or subscribed, please make sure to do that too, because all of those little details mean the world to us and make a huge difference. But also it means that we've got more touch points with you guys to communicate. And communicata.
And communicate.
Let's not change it again. Communicata. So thank you for being here, being a part of Honey, We Need to Chat. We're really appreciative.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do a little bit of a different episode today.
Yep.
We have a write-in from our chatter. Then we're going to dig a little bit deeper into who is the faces behind Honey, We Need to Chat. Who is Amy and Blair?
Yeah.
Who are Amy and Blair?
Who are we?
Linguists. That's who we are. As you can tell from the first 5 minutes of this episode.
Other words.
So welcome. Enjoy. We're going to start breaking some ice with a Would You Rather.
All right. I came up with these myself through Google. Would you rather always have a mullet haircut or a ponytail haircut? This is not a good question for you.
Ponytail haircut
Oh my gosh.
or hairstyle?
It just says haircut. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, change it.
Okay. Would you
No.
would you rather always have bad gas or always have a really dry mouth? I know
really
straight away.
dry
These are
mouth.
silly. Would you rather be a high school teacher or a clown high school teacher? Would
Hey,
you
babe.
really
Ask me a question. I'm curious about you.
Well, I feel like these guys are asking me, and I need to say these are silly.
Just pick one that's good.
All right. Would you rather have to always hop around on one foot or always have to squat?
Always hop around on one foot.
I don't think so.
What's
I
squat?
think squat. So maybe it must be when you stop, you squat. I think squat.
I think I'd want to hop on one foot.
What if you don't need to run? You're stuck.
It's just the squatting. Like, that's so uncomfortable.
So is hopping.
Yeah, but it doesn't like
But like just think
burn.
of that, like quads for days.
Quads for
Am I
days.
right?
But hopping would give you quads too, or some kind of something.
On one leg.
One more and make it good. No pressure.
It's just so trash. Next. Would you rather have an unlimited gift card to your favorite restaurant or favorite shop?
That is actually a good
Yeah.
one. I think logistically, I would say shop,
Yeah.
but my heart wants to say restaurant.
Yeah. I'm feeling quite hungry now thinking
Yeah,
of that.
same.
But I think favorite shop. Because the thing is, I don't even know what my favorite shop is. Maybe JB Hi-Fi, right?
Which is like a tech shop. Like
Yeah.
technology.
Yeah. So, but there's always new things happening there. Favorite restaurant, I'm gonna get sick of those meals.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think shop. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one.
If you did have to pick one shop and one restaurant, what would you pick? JB for your shop?
I think JB and restaurant. There needs to be quality menu, like broad menu. I want to say something silly like Green Street
That's not silly. Why is that silly?
because it's salad.
That's not silly. That's like a wise, mature,
I mean, yeah,
boring option.
that's why I'm doing it. Well, no, my reasoning for that is because I feel like I would eat that even if I got sick of that food. I would eat that because it's healthy.
Yeah.
So I think I would go Green Street.
Yeah.
You can't pick mine.
No, I wouldn't ever. So there's no worries there. I would actually be tempted to pick JB, but I think I logistically, again, I'd either go like Kmart or Target. Not because I love their stuff so much, but because I could get anything I need there for anybody that I needed to. So if I had a gift card for that constantly,
Yeah, it's true.
it'd fill almost
But
anything.
I mean, like the gifts I will give will
Be better,
be way better
but
than
niche.
any gift.
There'll be tech gifts.
Yeah, but like there's
Your baby's
so,
there with no clothes, and you
I
need to buy
don't
clothes.
think
You can't go to
anyone is
JB.
going to care that my gift to them is a huge TV
The
or a
gift, the
fridge.
gift card is to buy things for yourself, not to
No.
give to other
No,
people.
that was not in the rules. It was
What is
just,
the rule?
just what gift card would you want?
So that you can buy things there for yourself.
Yeah, well, but if I have to buy a gift for someone, I'm still buying it for myself to give to that person. I have to come with a
Yeah.
gift. This is
You
the
just,
gift.
I thought you thought that you, with a gift card, you have to buy things to gift to other people.
No, you just mentioned if you had to get something
Oh,
for
yeah.
someone.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if we needed clothes for our baby, if we needed nappies,
If we needed a TV for our baby.
snacks, JBs.
If we needed a fridge for our baby,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna provide.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll complete each other.
Okay.
And then food. I haven't answered. my
Oh
food
yeah,
yet.
the one. You can't say McDonald's.
Food is a really. I would never. I would.
Would you never?
I would never say McDonald's. I'm triggered by that because I had a rep for being the McDonald's
Oh really?
girl at my old work.
Oh,
Yeah, everyone
really?
was like, everyone was super healthy, and they were doing like, basically like overview, employee chat overview, whatever. And everybody went to this like hip cafe that was up the, like way closer than anything else. It was literally like a 2-minute walk from my workplace. Everyone went there, and my manager came in to me and said, "Amy, if you wanted to go to McDonald's, we could," which is like a 5-minute drive away. I was like, I don't want to go to McDonald's. She's like, I just know you like it a lot. Like, I want to go to the cafe. And I was very hurt that I had this rep that she thought out of the goodness of her heart, she would take me to McDonald's for my little chat, whereas everyone else went to the fancy cafe. I was hurt. So no, I wouldn't say McDonald's. Thank
All
you
right. So to
very
be
much.
clear, you don't always go to McDonald's, but it is your default.
It's just easy. That's
absolutely.
the only
Yeah,
reason.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not because I'm like obsessed with McDonald's or anything.
No.
It's usually for coffee, honestly. That's the biggest thing, is drive through for coffee. So anyway, now that I'm triggered,
We need another.
honestly,
another
I think
chat.
I would say something like either like TGI Fridays, which I don't love,
Yeah.
or like, but somewhere that's got like a list of things you can get, like quite a menu, or Paco's Tacos, because I love it. But
Oh,
I
yeah.
would get tired of it. I know that.
Yeah.
I know that without a doubt.
So I think my choices are
I think
the
you're pretty
correct
good.
ones.
Yeah. Green Street's a great one because you can. It's adjustable to whatever mood you're in, unless you're really not feeling salad. Cool. Well, the ice has
Is
been
it all?
broken. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We thought because
The ice is broken and the triggers have been.
and we're already triggered.
Yeah.
So we're going to be, anyway, I dyed my hair red, just breaking that ice. So everybody, yes. It's changed. We're going to be introducing a different segment, we thought.
Yeah.
And because we want to keep things fluid, it's new. We've had like our 20 episodes. We're in a bit of a good routine with getting the core episodes out. As we mentioned, we want to build our community element a little bit more on the platforms. And so as part of that, there's a few things we're going to be doing. One is we're going to put a survey out soon. We would love your feedback on it because the podcast is here to serve the people that are listening. It's not here to serve us, although it is also serving us, which is incredible. But we want to hear from you guys. So please, please, please keep an eye out for that. If you haven't yet subscribed to our mailing list, do so. We haven't been super active on it yet, purely out of time resources, but we will be. So if you want updates and that kind of thing, please hop on over to our website at www.honeyweneedtochat.com. Do not tease me for saying www. Do not tease me. If you know, you know.
I know you don't.
And also, as we mentioned, subscribe on the platforms that we're the social media platforms and that kind of thing. But we'll be putting out a survey and getting some feedback because we would love to hear from you guys. And we thought that one of the things we could do to keep our little intros, although this has already been long, but I keep our intros a bit more like moving ahead and structured, but also free, was we would introduce Chit-Chat. Chat-T. What was it?
Chit-Chat.
Chit-Chat.
I've got my daughter's little ponies
My Little Pony
mug. Mum was dirty. I didn't want to wash it.
So we will just touch base with each other at the beginning of the episodes over tea. A tea chat.
Lovely.
So welcome to Tea Chat, babe.
Thank you.
How are you going?
I'm good. Yeah. I am feeling a 8.
Yeah, good.
Out of 10. I think I've been on holidays, as you know, this week. So taking a week off. It's school holidays here, which I'm glad I've taken a week off for that. So you've been able to have more time, not as much time as I was hoping for, but more time focusing on the podcast this week, which has been good. So I've been hanging out with the kids, which has been great. I started getting sick, which has been terrible, but I think I'm on the mend, which is good.
Lots of the
So we took a week off because we're going to get very busy at work, and so I thought, look, let's take a break during school holidays to be here while everyone else is here, and then before the busy season. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah.
How are you?
Yes, I would also be an 8. I also feel a little bit like I'm getting sick. So if this is a bit scratchy, then that's probably why we're a bit under the weather.
Yeah.
Which is always the case when you stop. It's always the case.
Yeah.
You always get sick when you stop. So that's just classic is what it is. But yeah, good. It's been really nice to plow through some podcast stuff, get up to date. We've got some really exciting things happening that we can't fully share, not for secrecy reasons or anything, but they're not yet to come to pass. But really exciting things. So that's been really fun.
Yeah.
And we thought also we would just share a bit of how we've been connecting recently.
Yeah.
So date time. We actually had a date night, an at-home date night the other night. A games night.
Oh yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And
spontaneously.
Yep, it was great. And lots
didn't
of
last for
joy.
super long. I won. So Blair seemed to struggle more with that than he wanted to let on. But he let on.
We played card games. We played Phase 10. I'm not sure if you guys have played it. If you haven't, get onto it. It's amazing. And I'm very good at it. And let's leave it there.
You played with our 7-year-old today. And
I beat him.
You said you were actually struggling.
I actually was. We're on the same one. We haven't finished yet. Oh my gosh.
But I won. I smashed you.
Smashed is an exaggeration.
It wasn't great. But it was nice. It was just spontaneous. You're like, hey, what if we get takeaway after the kids go down and we play some games? So that was really good.
Yeah. And I think I've been chatting to a couple of couples recently about that too. And I'm like, oh man, I need to practice it myself. Not that we don't do it, we hadn't done it for a while. I'm like, oh man, I really want to just hang out. And so we did that. We just chatted for a bit and then we watched a show. We're currently watching The Bear at the moment. Oh man, it is such a good show. I love it. And
it has led to a new hobby for Blair, which has been huge.
Yeah. So ever since having kids, I've really struggled to find a hobby. Yeah. Before having kids, I was really into four-wheel driving, dirt bike riding, stuff like that, and camping, and loved it, and haven't really done it since, and I found it very hard. But ever since watching The Bear, man, do I like cooking.
He's been actually doing very well.
It's been very fun.
Blair has always been very experimental with his cooking, and he's always enjoyed it when he's done it, but he doesn't like do too much that often. There have been times where he's just been like, I'll come out to the kitchen area and he's got this look on his face like, so I'm experimenting, and which is awesome, except that sometimes the sauce mixtures are unresearched and he just
sounds good.
Experiments without any kind of anchor.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're great, and then other times they're a bit.
So this time round's
been great
because I'm following guides and stuff. Like I'm following actual recipes.
Yeah.
But that's been fun too, because I've been doing that with the kids. It's been a lot of fun, just slow and taking our time. And doing that during holidays is a lot more doable than when I'm working.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it. And usually it would just stress me out. But it's now that I've got the time this week, it's been a lot of fun.
And the motivation of Bear. You could be the Blair.
I am the Blair.
You are the Blair.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's been really good. Good job, Chef.
Thanks, Chef.
All right, well, that's chat, tea, chat.
Chit-Chat.
That's been the tea. That's the tea of the tea chat.
Nice.
Thank you for joining us. New segment. So we're going to dive in by reading one of our chatter questions that we've had written in.
On Patreon, yep.
Which we thought was a good kind of start for this conversation that we're going to be having today.
Yeah, and it was something that we were planning on doing for our 20th episode as well. So it lined up quite well. So we're going to dive into that now. I'll just read it. So this is from our chatter from Patreon. He writes in and says, the idea of a weekly check-in is a really good idea. But I have a few questions. How will this play out when the relationship is quite new or neither partner are able to actually make good use of it and say things they feel? So that's a really, really good question, especially so if you're in your new relationship, like how intense do you go in from the beginning? Yeah.
I think it depends on a few things straight off the bat, like what kind of dynamics you've got going in the relationship. Because if it's a very casual relationship, it probably would feel a little bit weird to implement a check-in night. If there's like an understanding that, oh no, we're committed to each other and we're committed to seeing where this goes, then I think there's no problem with implementing something like that. I think probably how you do it is the bigger thing. So if that was me, I think I'd be like, what if we had a weekly like date night and we just check in, see how we're going, and then we go out for dinner or we have an at-home date night or whatever works for you guys. And instead of it being like, let's have a weekly check-in and just like sit down and make sure that we're on the same page about things, like something that's a bit heavier may feel a bit confronting at the beginning. But you could make it funner. Instead of it being a heavy thing, just make it a date night and have part of it be that you're checking in with each other.
And I think unless if you're only just starting to get to know each other, you don't know where you're going to go. I think it's more down to once you've made that commitment, we're together. I want to be intentional about this. Be intentional about it. I think that's a decision you need to make as well is, do you just want to cruise into this relationship or do you want to be intentional with this relationship? Both have its perks. I'm very much about being intentional. Yeah. Be intentional about the relationship. Set the tone from the beginning early on. Not maybe not the very beginning, but early on, just set the tone. It's like, all right, I hold this as a high value. I value that we check in. I value that we're intentional. I value that I can actually ask you the questions. How are you going out of 10? So I know how I can better support you. I need to know more about you. What's your love language? All this sorts of stuff. Starting that exploring is so fun. Yeah. Especially in the early days.
There's so much to learn.
Yeah.
It's like a puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's ways of dating that just are so not my way of dating that it's kind of hard for me to even put my brain in that space. And I know there would be people that are very casual and they don't want any kind of intense, heavy thing put on them. But if you are someone who has a value for being intentional, or you're like, no, I really do want this kind of culture in my relationship, I think it's so valid for you to be very clear with that up front. And if it freaks the other person out, be gentle with it. Don't be super staring them in the face and just be like, we're going to do this, this, and this, and we're going to get married and blah, 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 blah. That might freak most people out on the second or third date. But in introducing, like you've said, this culture of, oh, I'm going to be intentional. This is important to me. I don't want to muck you around. I don't think that goes astray if it is confronting and puts the other person off, then that's probably actually a good thing in the long run because they're not in the same place. They might not value those kinds of things, which is valid. But if you value that as a person and you want that for your relationship, being clear that actually I'm a pretty intentional person, so I'd love to learn these things about you in the nice, gentle way that you introduce that, is, I think, always going to be a strengthening thing. Because the more you can learn about somebody at the beginning gently and in a healthy way, the more you can learn about them, the better you're going to be equipped to navigate things. So yeah, I think introducing it in a fun way rather than it being, when we introduced it, it was like we were married, the check-in night specifically. And it was out of a necessity to be kind of addressing things. And I don't think you need to be in that place to introduce something like this. I think you could wind it back and have it be more casual and more fun, but kind of be that introduction to having a time where you're just checking that the other person's going okay. And I think how the other part of that question was if people struggle to make the best use of that time. Yeah. Some people won't naturally know how to engage with somebody on that level. They won't know how to say what they need to say. They won't know how to ask the questions they need to ask. They won't even, like we've spoken about, they won't even know how to like make themselves curious about the other person. And that's totally fine because everybody comes from a different place. So it's not that, oh, you don't get how to do this. You don't get how to make this a good time. Oh, then you're not like a good person. Like there's things you can do if you recognize, oh, we come for these check-in nights or we come for these hangouts and we never talk about anything serious. And then we both end up just being kind of like avoiding what's going on and we're not really talking about what needs to happen or whatever. Or we get derailed because one of us gets distracted on their phone or whatever it might be that's making that time not quality. I think addressing those specific things and making there be more structure or less structure depending on what it is you're navigating is really helpful. So if you're, for me, the big thing when we started these check-ins was I didn't know how to ask for what I needed. I found it really hard to be clear with Blair about how I was feeling about things. And I was also very scared to be confrontational because I'd seen that go so poorly. And so I was kind of stuck. I didn't know how to raise these things I needed to raise without feeling like I was then being like critical or negative. And so I found it really helpful because we actually Googled or someone sent us a list of like 4 or 5 questions to just ask every time. And that took a bit of the like guessing out of it because the question was, what's something that you're celebrating this week? Or what's something that you found really hard this week? Is there anything that you would like you need me to know or you need to make me aware of? How is our budget going? Like stuff like that. And it was, instead of it being like, so something I want to talk to you about is this thing that's really hard and I have to like break it to you. It was like almost like you asking, so is there anything you want to tell me about? And so that just kind of like makes it easier for you to communicate in that space. Makes it easier if you're coming to the nights and you're like, I don't know what to do. You got a list of things to do and it feels kind of weird, maybe, but it's not weird. Like we compensate for our weaknesses in every area of life in order to become stronger. Absolutely. And this is just one of those ways of doing that.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think as well, like, don't put too much pressure on yourself, like we've said. Enjoy the beginning. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. You know, just make fun. Like make it fun. Don't get too serious too fast. Doesn't mean you can't be serious at the beginning, but you don't want to go too far that way. Just enjoy each other's company and figure out, is this going somewhere? Is it not? You know?
Yeah. And see where you are as a couple, what your vibe, your dynamic is and what kind of pace works for you in that way.
And one thing I would say too, though, is if this is a priority for you, don't wait for them. Yeah. You know what I mean? You start your journey in being prepared and being intentional with yourself. Like start exploring these things about yourself. You know, what triggers you? What baggage are you bringing to the relationship? What values do you have? Because when you understand that more, it's going to be a lot easier for you to be able to share that to your partner when the time is right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And be curious about the other person. They talk about this in networking as well. If you're meeting people for the first time, the best thing you can do is ask them questions about themselves because people find it easier to talk about themselves, especially if they've been asked questions for the most part. So if you're struggling, like Blair said, if you're finding it a priority for you and you're not sure where your partner's at, do that work for yourself. And instead of being like, what's something I need to raise with them that I'm struggling with them? be like, how's a way I can like ask them how they're going and be curious about them. So and if you're coming together on these nights and it's a bit uncomfortable, just be curious about your partner in a neutral, uplifting way. And that's one of the best things about the check-in nights is it is a neutral time. It should be a neutral time. It shouldn't be, oh, we've just had an argument, now we're having a check-in. Like this is meant to be a time that's set aside neutrally. So you're coming to it from a place that's not triggered. You're not coming from a heated conversation or anything like that. So curiosity, if you're struggling with this time, put things in place, find questions, find a place, a time, a night, whatever it might be that makes it easier for you to do that. And just take it at the pace that you're at, I reckon.
And then he just followed up with 2 more questions. How was it for you when you started doing them, so the weekly check-ins? And was it easy to start talking about things? And I thought, well, let's just bundle those up together. We were wanting to share a bit of our story anyway on our 20th episode, helping you guys know a little bit more about us, where did our journey start, all that sort of stuff. And I thought it's all going to get answered through that anyway. So let's dive into that.
Hey guys, just wanted to pop in and take a sec to talk about the extra content you can find over on our Patreon and our Spotify subscription. We have a fun little community growing over there with extra episodes, extra stories. We're also going to have resources, messages back and forth, and also submitting listener stories through that portal as well. So
also outro themes.
There's lots to be gained. If you want to be a part of our closer knit community here at Honey We Need a Chat, please hop on over to Patreon or Spotify subscriptions and join us there. We would love to see you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Yeah, so 20 episodes in, we thought it would be good to introduce you to us.
Hi.
So a little bit more. Hi, we're Amy and Blair. And we've also been talking a lot about the importance of story from our New Zealand trip. Since then, it's been something that's really come out in our content. It's been something that's come out in our family, and just the importance of knowing a little bit more about each other and the significance that brings to how we're operating now. And that's the same for you guys. Listening to our episodes is one thing, and then knowing a little bit more about us might add a bit more depth to that, or a bit more like perspective from where we're coming from and that kind of thing. One being, why does Amy's voice sound so weird? I don't know if we've ever said that. Maybe we have, but my voice sounds a little bit weird, and that's okay.
Different.
It sounds a bit weird.
Yeah, different.
Yeah. So we're going to introduce ourselves. So I'm Amy. I am 33 years old, and I am from Australia. I do have a mixed international accent, which sounds snooty. Sounds like I'm...
What's snooty?
Snooty, like, I'm an international accent.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about your accent sounds snooty.
No. Well, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
It sounds snooty, but it also sounds like, and I'm very aware of this, sounds like someone who's trying to do an accent and failing miserably. I'm very aware of
this. Has that been
this.
said to you before?
No. But I've experienced other people doing that, and I'm like, oh no, that's me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'm aware of that, mostly because, well, the podcast is a huge thing, but also I'm really into drama, like I've mentioned, and I can't nail the Aussie accent, and I can't nail the American accent, and I can't nail any other accent because I'm not great at accents. So I just am what I am. But that's okay. So I do have an international accent, and that is because I grew up in Papua New Guinea. I was there from the age of 8 to 18. My dad was a helicopter pilot with a mission organization. And so I grew up in an international community, which was amazing. Most of my friends were actually American. My school was American structure. And then I came back when I graduated high school to Australia, I'm from Melbourne in Australia. I did not know what I wanted to do. So you'll hear us allude to stuff in our episodes about our histories, and we're never going to dig deep into like our families or like our backgrounds, stuff that's not important for the world to know. It's not going to probably come out, and that's okay. But, I grew up as the oldest of 4 kids, and I was very stressed all the time. And my family dynamics were a little bit tough growing up. I love my family and I'm really close with them, but there was difficult dynamics. And so I came into adulthood not really sure what I wanted to do in life at all, and had quite a few years of just being like floaty, even just in terms of what I was interested in work-wise. I didn't understand myself at all. And I had spent so long being stressed about life, that I just felt, I've said this as well on the podcast, I didn't feel present until I was like well into my 20s, even I think into our marriage kind of thing. So I kind of feel like I just floated through life. But then I started studying multiple times.
I'm studying again now.
And I am studying again now. This time I will finish. I started studying with the idea of teaching because there were so many things that I thought that sounded good. And I was like, well, maybe I'll be a teacher.
But to be fair, you can do everything though. Like you are a unicorn. You seriously pick up stuff so much and your interests are so broad. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I didn't understand that about myself though. At the time, I just felt like a failure because I was like, I can't finish anything. And I'm also not long-term interested in any one thing necessarily. There's some stuff that broadly speaking, I'm interested in that area, and that's kind of stayed the same way, but there wasn't like, so I decided to pursue teaching because people kept saying, oh, you'd be a great teacher. And I was like, yeah, it could be interesting. So I did a year, and actually that teaching degree ended up being a major in psychology because it's a long, boring story, but basically I couldn't do teaching straight up. I had to do something else first. And so I majored in psychology, which I love, but I hate like study. I just wanted practical stuff. I hated all the theory, like not the theory that was interesting, but just kind of like the writing essays and finding sources and stuff like that. I was like, no. So anyway, I did that for a year and then I dropped out and then I applied for an acting school and I did not get in. And my mom's like, why don't you travel and experience outside of your little world for a time? And I was like, I have traveled my whole life. I don't need to travel. And then the next night I was like looking up where to travel. So then I ended up going to Spain for 6 months for a short course over there, which was an experience. And then I came home and I suddenly met my now husband.
Yeah, like you did.
A couple weeks after arriving home. And then life got a lot clearer. So that was cool.
Yeah, so I grew up in rural Victoria. Well, I was born in rural Victoria. Grew up in rural Victoria. And my dad's a bricklayer. I was on the job site early years. Maybe, I don't know. I'm terrible with time frames and remembering things, but maybe around between 6 and 9, I started going to the job site. So I've been working, obviously not full time, but I'm used to the workforce. We moved to Queensland when I was 9 and did my schooling and everything up there. To an area, it was pretty rough. And moved back to rural Victoria again when I was 16. And I had a bit of a colourful background back then, so I moved away from pretty scary dudes, I guess you could say. And there was just a bit of an escape for me. I was trying to get away from that. And then I played footy, Australian football for many years as well. So really focused on, for me and my brother, so I got a brother, one older brother. What was really invested into us was work ethic and teamwork. And we got that through being on the job site and playing football. You know, it's just, we just worked really, really well together. We did not get along at all growing up. Well, from my perspective, we didn't get along growing up at all. But really, really, really close now. We're each other's best man at our weddings, which was great. But just after he got married, I went overseas for 2 years. I was on a mission ship for 2 years, so sailed around pretty much from the Middle East through to Southeast Asia, and I left in Hong Kong after my second year, where I worked in an engine room. And when I joined there, I was really keen just to sort of get out, sightsee, and do all this Christian ministry stuff, which was sounding really, really cool. But reality was I was stuck in the engine room pretty much for 2 years. The first year they taught me welding, and because of my trade background, I was used to tools, so they taught me welding, and I was welding for the first year. So I had to really struggle at the end of that year. There was a lot of burnout and intense things happened, and got put into a leadership role of the engine room. And I'd never been in leadership before in my life, like never. And for me, it was really strange. Like, it was such a fit for me. I was super nervous about it. I had zero interest in leading anyone, but it really was a natural fit for me. And I've been in leadership ever since. It was like at that moment I discovered, I don't know, I don't know what you call it.
You found your place.
Yeah, I found like, and it was like I found my place, like in the workforce. You know,
What you're natural at.
What I'm more natural at. It wasn't, you know, for me. I'm not really. I don't have this high drive just to do work. I have to do meaningful work. It has to really feel that spot for me where we're making a difference in the world. You know, it has to be a cause behind it. But I can't just do any job. Like I get now, if I'm just doing any job, I get really restless. I want the next thing, and I'm always about growing and strategizing and so forth, which has been quite fun to recognize within myself. But with that comes at a cost, because I think leadership can be a very lonely thing. Yeah. But also my work ethic has its ups and downs. I can be quite chill, or I can be very, very intense and burn out, and which I've done multiple times, and I've shared on here quite a bit. And every time I stop, I get sick, and like now. So anyway, so I was on there for 2 years, and came back, and I got offered an internship at a church when I came back down in Melbourne. And I was there for 1 year, and I met you. You had just come back from Spain, and I came up and I saw you. I went and visited your church, and I don't know, we made eye contact. We did. You were at the front of the church. I was at the back of the church. You did something at the front and turned around, and we made eye contact. And actually, in that moment, and this is no joke, I'm like, wife material. Never met Amy before. Never knew anything really about her. I actually worked for her uncle. She worked in the cafe next door to my office. I never saw her in my life. Made eye contact, and I'm like, that's wife material. Yeah. I never really had a girlfriend before meeting Amy, and I was never really interested in having a girlfriend. I always wanted a wife. I think because for me, I'd been in those like interests, you know what I mean? There's like love interests, situations. Yeah, but never anything further. And I was so sick of it. Like, I'm just like this. I'm so over this. I'm so over, like, do you like me? Do you don't like me? Do you like me? Do you don't like me? Or getting led on, or whatever else. Like, I just had zero time. Yeah, I was never about the game. Yeah. And so anyway, I saw Amy, and then after the church service, I went pretty much straight up to you, and I introduced myself, and then you walked away.
I didn't just walk away. I was just very intimidated, because I had the same moment when we met eyes. It was really weird. And
she looked at me and she's like, wife material.
Wife material. Never seen more wife material in my life. No, I would never have ever. If anyone had said, do you believe in love at first sight? I was like, that is ridiculous. And it wasn't like I was in love with you, but I knew straight away that you were significant to my story. And it got weirder after that, but just like, like as in like even more moments of it, just like these weird things over the next few weeks. But I would never have ever said that I believed in that. And I still now, if I'm like talking to people that are in the dating world, I'm still like, there's not one person that you find. I really believe that. But there was something really significant with you, which is amazing. I was very well timed for me, and for I guess for us. But for the different significances for us, it was good that it worked out the way that it did. But because of that, I was intimidated when I walked up to you. You were with some friends of mine. Yeah, I was intimidated already. And so I was trying to act cool, calm, and collected. And then I thought I made small talk. And then,
well, not really. So I asked, because I think the conversation went for about 2 minutes or something, right? And I can't remember the conversation. It was something like, oh, so you've just come back, you know, where have you been? You're like, and I said like, oh, what's your accent? Or something like, I grew up in Papua New Guinea. It's just like, I'm full dude. Yeah, I'm not even from here. And then and I'm like, oh, cool. And you didn't give me anything. That was it. It was just like,
but it was enough to keep you interested. You didn't lose interest in me.
No. Well, then you walked away. I'm like, all right, I was securing myself to be like, cool, you're not interested. You know what I mean? So that's the thing, is like, I never wanted a girlfriend. I always wanted a wife, but I still put myself out there to test the waters, you know? Yeah. And then
you can't find a wife if you don't test the waters.
Yeah, it's all about the waters. And then number of months later, a month later or something like that, your cousin...
Baby, oh my gosh.
What?
Blair and his time frames.
What was it?
Oh my gosh.
Was it the next day?
It's literally the next weekend.
Okay, cool. Sweet.
Actually, I could be wrong, but I think it was the next weekend.
Yeah, cool. Well, sometime in the near future, after that moment.
Within the week.
Yeah. It was your cousin-in-law's birthday party that we both knew.
Yeah.
And I saw you there again. And I came over and I was making my move and you walked away.
Maybe you just didn't talk fast enough. And I was like, this guy's not going to talk fast enough.
What do you mean?
He's not going to get his conversation out there fast enough and I'm going to get awkward. I'm just going to walk away.
What do you mean?
Like, I get awkward if people don't talk and then
I literally came up and had a conversation with you. It was like, hey, Amy, how are you doing?
Do you want to date?
Do you want some of this?
I don't remember that. I do remember that, but I don't remember what we talked about. Anyway.
Oh, nice. Cool.
My sister went to his youth group that week as well. And she came home. She's like, Amy, I met the man you're going to marry.
Yeah.
And I was like, is it Blair? And she's like, yes. And I was like, everybody's saying that.
Yeah.
And I, to this day, don't know who everybody is. I don't know why I said that, but I remember clearly being like, everyone is saying that.
Yeah.
It's probably just my head.
Yeah.
My head was, all the voices in my head was saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you added me on Facebook.
I did.
And we had Facebook romance.
Yeah. I've got all of those chats printed out, actually. Blair will never read them, but I will, and I'll show them to my kids, and I'll make them read them.
Yeah,
we'll see which ones are my true faithful children. But yeah, we chatted on Facebook, and then everything grew from there. And from the very beginning, it was super intentional.
Yeah.
And actually, the way that Blair told me he liked me was he just messaged, because we were like messaging for, I don't know, a couple of weeks or something, and I was like really confused if you liked me or not. But you were very like intentional. I felt very much like you were intentionally talking to me, but I was like, maybe he's like this with everybody, I don't know. And my cousin's like, yeah, I think he's just very friendly. Like, maybe he doesn't like me, I don't know. And then you just messaged me one night. I remember I was sitting in my lounge room with my family and we were talking, and then you're like, so obviously I like you, but I just want to be really like, I want to take things slow and just be really careful and intentional. And you did not ask if I liked you. And I just remember being like, okay, yeah. You weren't like...
And your face went red.
Yeah, my face went red and I screenshot it and I sent it to my friends.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's not even asking if I like him. He's just so confident that I do, which I did. And just so like intentional, like from the beginning, just very much like, this is what we should do. I think we should be really careful and intentional and blah, blah, blah. And then we started being intentional.
So we didn't like... we dated, but we didn't. We labeled it back then when we were young. We didn't officially start dating. No, we dated. We did. We did everything else like that a dating couple would. We were pretty much dating. But I was so aware of what I did not want that I did not want to waste time. So again, like I finally found someone. I'm like, I could really see something here, and for the first time, I'd felt that. But I was still. Look, this is going to be a big thing for me, for us to actually get to that point where where I want our relationship to be, where I want our relationship to be, not just with, whether it was with you or not. I knew this was going to be an intentional thing for me. I had to make sure that I was going to be working on myself, because I had a lot of things that I was still working through. So, cool. I like you. And it's a bit arrogant of me to say, obviously I like you, and I didn't ask you how you felt about me. But for me, I was just so intentional from the beginning. Look, all right, cool. If you like me, I'm that guy. This is the sort of guy that I am. I am going to be intentional. I'm not going to beat around the bush for this. This is my fears of divorce. The word divorce is a fear of mine. And so I can do something about that now by being upfront from the very beginning. This is the sort of guy I am, and this is the sort of relationship that I want. Are you in for it? If not, that's fine. Let's finish here. Obviously, I didn't say these words to you, but this is what was going in my head. If this is not what you're in for, I want to know now. So I'm going to be intentional. I'm going to be upfront from the very beginning. And then from there, the unofficial dating stage, what that looks like was just we'll spend time together. We'd go on dates. We're dating. But we also had some older couples speaking into that relationship. And again, it wasn't necessarily about them speaking into if we are good for each other. It was more about what are we working on as individuals? Like, how are we growing as individuals, and how does that complement each other? And like, how should a relationship look? But also lessons that they've learned. So it wasn't even just us talking about ourselves the whole time. It was really about these older couples just sharing with us their stories and things that they'd learned about each other and how they went about that, the mistakes they made. Because like when you hear those sorts of mistakes, you're going to learn from other people, right? So anyway, we were just a sponge in those early days of just catching up with older couples, just hearing their stories and getting to speak into, our relationship and us as individuals.
Yeah. And thankfully, like we were just very ready to be very intentional. Like it just happened. And maybe that's why it worked the way that it worked. But we both came at it from that perspective. I'd seen my parents' marriage struggle my whole life, and I knew what I had unpicked watching them, and I knew what I didn't want to be taking into my marriage and what I needed to be aware of. And I was tired of dating. I was tired of that whole, exactly what you said, the games or the confusion or whatever. I just wanted to be intentional. And so thankfully that worked out really, really well for us. And Blair was doing his internship at the church and then decided to do a second year. And I also decided to do the internship with him. And so that led us into an even more intensive time of getting to know each other, because we were working together as well as dating. And that just provided so many opportunities, difficult, some of them, but really, really challenging in a good way, opportunities to learn about each other, how we worked, what we struggled with, what our weaknesses were, but also about how we like helped make each other stronger.
So what that looks like, in the internship, we actually did quite a few personality tests and things too. Because when we first started working together, Amy and I are the complete opposites. We didn't really know that. We just knew that we clashed in the way that we worked together because we just worked so differently. So I'm very well organized, mapped out. This is what we're doing. I've got this big picture in mind. I'm a very big picture person, and I skip details, right? This is the sort of person I am. Where Amy is more slower to get the things going, but she will always get it done. But for me, it would stress me out so much. But she's really good at the details and going along with it, and picking up all those things along the way, which is where I struggled. So yeah, it would stress me out so much. And I'm still quite new to leadership. This is my 4th year in a leadership role, which is still quite new. 3rd year. First year was on the ship. Second year was at the church. Two very, very different dynamics. And then the 3rd year with my partner, and this was a whole other level. Through these different personality tests, we quickly identified that we are literally, in every test that we've done, single test that we've done, we're the complete opposites. Yeah. But what we started to realize, and this cool thing about the internship, was that, you don't just do the personality tests for the sake of doing personality tests. You do them then in terms of how does that operate as a team now? Yeah. So you identify, how you work, then how everyone else works, and then how does that work together? And that's what we had from the very beginning. So from then on, I have never, ever been able to have a job other than when I was landscaping for that year. I've never, ever been able to have a job where Amy's not a part of it. You know what I mean? I have to, because I know what she does. She fills the gaps of my weaknesses, so I need to have her at some level in part of my role. And she has been ever since, except for that year of landscaping.
Yeah. Blair's gonna get a bottle for baby. But yeah, we had the benefit of doing this intensive training that we would have been training individually if we weren't there together and in a relationship anyway. But because we were starting our relationship, it was an incredible kind of foundation to build that. And so during that year is I think it was 6 months in, it was in June or something, that we ended up getting engaged, because we were actually only dating, I think, for 8 months in the end. And we had spent these months being so intentional, and to some people's perspectives, it would have been pretty intense, I guess. But like we said, for us, it was just right. So we'd spent these months being intentional about learning ourselves and learning each other. And we'd built a network around us, a community and family around us that were supportive and encouraging. And we knew they were there to challenge us, keep us accountable, and help us to be better, and to think of each other and all of those things. We had built that really solid foundation. So that worked very well in our favor. We ended up getting engaged in the Mediterranean. We went for a mission trip over there, and Blair took me, he had been there the year before. He took me to this beautiful cafe on the edge of the Mediterranean, and there was no one there. It was empty. I don't even know if it was open. We were on the balcony, on the veranda overlooking the ocean. And then he's like, look in the distance while I take a photo of you. And I turned around and I turned back, and he was on his knee with a ring. It was beautiful. He's not here for me to have that back and forth here, but it was really beautiful. So we spent the next 6 months. So the rest of the year, we were also still in the internship together, which was just really cool. So we're preparing for marriage, but we're doing it in the context of working together and being in this team and learning about each other. So it was just like marriage prep to the extreme. I think during that time is actually when we also started to be really intentional with some of the resources we've mentioned here. So the 5 love languages, I think that's when we would have had that first introduced to us. And also just we used to ask each other questions when we would go on drives and that kind of thing. We would Google 100 questions to ask your partner or to ask before you get married. There was a book of things I wish I knew before I got married. And just having those conversations and asking those questions and being curious, I think was really helpful for us in that prep, because we knew how different we were. Yeah. We knew how different our backgrounds were. Like our family cultures were so different to each other, pretty much the opposite, like we were. And so we knew that was probably going to be things that we would navigate and have to work through when we did get married. And so I think that was like kind of the beginning of this question that the chatter is written in. How did you start these conversations? That's kind of where these conversations started, was in these early months of engagement.
Yeah, and going back to our chatter's question, it's you have to ask that question: what's the value of yours, right? Because this is all in line with the values that we had already had, kind of separate from each other. Again, from the very beginning, I knew what I did not want to have, and so I knew that there was a lot of work to be done to have what I wanted to have, know, and to have the value and the vision of a family and a wife and a marriage that I had envisioned. And we're very lucky that we had the support that we had and the input that we had, both individually and together. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think throughout our whole journey, something that really helps me is the projecting and being like, where do I want to be in 5 years time? Where do I want to be in 10 years time? And just knowing that whatever we want that to be, whatever vision we've got for that, and we would choose, we need to be making the changes for that now to get there. And so there's little things we can do. And this is across the board. It's not just relationships, but like you just said, we knew what we didn't want, or we knew what we did want in our marriages individually. And so that kind of helped to shape that. And so if you're in a relationship, you might not have the same values, and that's okay. Like we are opposites. We have different values. We've just done a values exercise recently at the retreat, and it was different values. And so that doesn't mean you're not going to work or that it's doomed or anything like that. Understanding those things about each other, that is the biggest thing. So understanding how we differ in the values, that was a huge thing for us in those early months.
There's a lot more than just a value. It's the question of, why is that a value? Is it a healthy value?
Yeah, and our anxiety around those things, thankfully, is shifting as well over the years, because we've been able to identify them. We know where they've come from. It's not just when you start to interact with people, and I think this is one of the biggest things that kind of boggles my mind. Everyone reacts. Everybody reacts. You react to whatever's going on around you, and you react from your perspective and your lens. And so when someone comes out aggressive or weird, or it like doesn't sit right with you, and you're like, like that's put me out. It's not just them deciding that they're going to be a horrible person that day. It's because of so many things. It doesn't excuse, like we've said, the behavior, but there's so much that goes into how someone interacts with the world around them, that if you come into a relationship unaware of why you react that way, and you also come in unwilling to be curious about why that other person reacts that way, you're going to have a tough time, because it will just be, you'll be dealing with the surface level stuff that doesn't make sense and does offend and does look hurtful, instead of dealing with the deeper stuff that explains a bit of what's going on and helps you have grace for each other and helps you see them in a 3D way rather than a 2D way, which is why I really think intentionality is the best thing. That's why I think communication in relationships is so important. Yeah. So we went into marriage from that platform. We're really lucky for that. Not everybody has an opportunity to have such an intensive time of getting to know each other. And I'm really grateful for that because I think it's set us up to face, the next 7 years. Had a ton of trials. So my parents got divorced right after we got married. We had trouble getting pregnant with our first. We had work issues. We had a tough birth. Like I had an emergency C-section. We were struggling with housing. Like we kept being moved around or not finding a place. All of these things. And then diving into COVID, burnout, church issues, work issues. My father suddenly died. We moved regionally, like all these things crammed into a 7-year period. And so I'm so grateful that before we dived into that, we had this nice foundation to kind of come back on because we relied on that. Like throughout those years, we've relied on that foundation a lot. And without it, we would have spent those trials also being confused at the other person, also trying to navigate why the other person's, and we still question. Sometimes I'm like, I don't get it. And we have to kind of pick through what the reactions are. But at least we've had that foundation building that understanding of each other beforehand so that when we are facing these really difficult times, we're not also facing the dynamic the same way that it would have been otherwise. So, the second part of the chatter question was, how was it for us when we started having these conversations? Was it easy for us to have these conversations and have these check-ins? And it wasn't necessarily easy, but it's been a slow burn. It's been something we've built up over the years. It's something that we've woven into how our relationship works. But I also would encourage that if your relationship hasn't been like this to date, doesn't mean it can't be. You can start now with this intentionality.
Yeah. So thank you guys again so much. This is number 20 for the podcast. And yeah, again, we could not have done this without you. It's been such an incredible journey, and our conversations have got so much better since doing this. But also, like, there's so many of you guys on our chatters, man. Shout out to you guys so much for just being a part of this and supporting us in the way that you do, and being a part of this podcast and speaking into this podcast by giving awesome questions, awesome ideas, even feedback. All that has just been absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for our chatters.
Thank you so much for being with us for these 20 episodes. We hope there's many, many more to come. We really appreciate you guys being a part of our community.
Absolutely. Good chat. Thanks, guys.